Hello Flight Simmers, Weeper here and welcome back to the channel. In this video I would like to talk about my private tour I had of the 111th Combat Wing in the Hellenic Air Force in Greece. Most of you that are following me know that I recently spent 2 weeks in Greece. It was an amazing vacation, a vacation of a lifetime. And while there, I got invited to go visit the 111th Combat Wing in Almyros. So a little bit of backstory on that. On Instagram, I don't remember how we met, but I met a real Greek Block 50 PX2 pilot for the 341st Aeros named Perseus, and we kind of befriended on Instagram, and I was mentioning to him that I was planning on visiting Greece, and he told me if I ever visit that he'll give me a private tour of the base. So needless to say, I kind of made that more of a priority to get to Greece soon because I don't know exactly what's going on with his career, and I was afraid to miss that opportunity. So we went, my family and I went to Greece for 2 weeks. We flew into Athens, and then we set up a tour. We basically, I think it was called Go Tours or Go World, Go Travel, I don't know. My ex-wife set it all up for me. But we went to Athens, spent a night there. I spent 2 days there, I believe, where we got to tour the Acropolis and other key points in the city of Athens. And then we got on a boat ride to the first island, Milos. Milos had a fantastic time. It was a very quiet island. We basically had 2 days of leisure to really do nothing. So I noticed when we were driving to our hotel, everyone is kind of rolling around in ATVs and gators and whatnot. So me, my ex-wife, and my daughter, I rented a gator, and we just went all over the island to all the different beaches, you know, for dinner and shopping, etc. And it was just pretty cool rolling around in Milos, visiting the island. It was just really cool. Then after that, we went to Santorini, which was incredibly busy island, and we're told when we went, which is just the first 2 weeks of October, that it was a very quiet time for tourism, which was kind of crazy. But it just goes to show how many hotels or resorts they have, because every hotel we were at was roughly quiet, but the touring spots were just jam-packed. Like, you know, it felt like we're a bunch of cattle walking around. But went to Santorini, went on a couple tours there, saw this Greek wedding show, which was kind of really cool, and a lot of fun for me and the family. And then after that, we went to Mykonos, which was another fairly busy island. We stayed in the 5-star hotel there, which was just mind-blowing how nice that hotel was. To the point where I kind of didn't want to leave. I just wanted to stay there. But we ended up going on a few tours, and we also went to an ancient island, or ancient remains island, Milos. Milos? I think it was Milos? No, Delos, I think it was. And that was a pretty surreal environment, walking around in a 4,000 or 5,000 old village, and a lot of the walls were still intact. Some of them were only about waist high, but some of them were higher, but you could really get a feel of those ancient Stone Age times, and seeing that they actually had a kind of a sewage system going on, which probably would have smelt horrible in those days, but they actually, you know, you kind of have a different outlook on the Stone Age times of being very primitive people when you look at the kind of the underground drainage system that they developed. And, you know, everything's made out of marble and stone, and it's just mind-blowing experience, which is what really draws me into liking Greece so much. And after that, we went back to Athens, where we spent a couple days there on a couple more tours, and then I rented a car and drove to Volos in order to meet up with Perseus and get my tour in Almyros. And driving in Greece was, I mean, I'm a professional driver, been a police officer for 20 years. I've done tactical driving, anti-terrorist tactical driving in Blackwater. I mean, I pretty much had driven all my life, and I was almost terrified driving in Greece because I guess the speeds are just a suggestion. You know, when we went up to Volos, I was going the speed limit, and cars were passing me so fast. I was in this tiny little toy car, I think it was, that my car was shuddering. Cars were passing me so fast. But on the way back, however, I kind of figured out what the suggested speed is, and it's only a suggestion. And then I had a lot of fun almost racing way back to Athens, where we spent a couple days again, and then we head back to Canada. So let's talk about my tour of the 111 Combat Wing. So oddly enough, when I was in Greece, I received a message on Instagram, and it ended up being from I shit you not, the commander of the 347th, and he must have learned about me through social media. He ended up contacting me and basically said they'd be honored if I would visit. And I told them, I said, hey, well, I'm actually supposed to be heading there on, I think it was a Wednesday or a Tuesday. I think it was a Tuesday for a tour anyways. And so he said, great. And it was kind of pretty cool. I ended up showing that to Perseus, who had already told me that that the commander was a friend of his and that he would set up a tour. And he seemed a little surprised that he, out of the blue, contacted me as well. And the funny thing is, when I was actually there talking with him, and we're sitting in the officers' mess talking, he had no idea that I was in Greece the time he sent me the message. He just decided to send the invite, and then sure enough, he started following my cockpit page. And then the next day or something like that, a few hours later, he saw all my updates, and he was like, oh my God, the guy's in Greece right now. So talk about meant to be. But anyway, so let's talk about that. So I was scheduled to meet Perseus at would have been the North Gate at 8 o'clock in the morning. I, of course, didn't want to be late, and I was super pumped. I was so excited about this. I can't even express in words. And I ended up going there 15 minutes early. I went with my ex-wife and my daughter. They were going to drop me off, and I actually didn't want them to go because I just didn't want any distractions, and I didn't want to put too much of a burden on the combat wing or whoever was kind of driving me around, etc. So they were going to go do some shopping in Volos for the day and then come back and pick me up. So we went there. I think I was there about 15 minutes early. I saw a bunch of signs said no photos. I took photos anyways. And I guess I made the guards a little nervous. I used to be a military police myself and did defense at some bases in Canada. So I kind of know what that's like. But we were just sitting in the car about 50 meters away, maybe 25 meters away. I didn't want to sit too close to the gate. And then at one point I could hear one of the guards kind of yelling at me. Of course, he didn't speak English. I don't speak Greek. So you kind of know where this is going. So I kind of walked up, and don't get me wrong, they weren't like on the high alert or anything. They were just wondering, what the hell is this foreigner doing standing outside our gate? So I was trying to communicate with him the best I can, my purpose of being there. And I ended up showing him my Instagram message from the commander, and he recognized the name, perhaps his photo, and kind of was put at ease. And they brought me inside. And then, of course, me being a police officer myself, I didn't bring any ID, such an idiot. So that caused a little bit of problems because they're trying to, here I am on a high security base, and I didn't have my passport with me. And sure enough, Perseus finally showed up and had everybody at ease and was able to actually communicate with them what my purpose for being there. So we ended up fixing it up where I just got my ex-wife to take a photo of my passport, and then I emailed that to their security, just so they have track of who was on their base, etc. So I got in with him. We drove over to the 347th headquarters area, basically. And this was pretty cool because anybody who flies BMS in either EMF or when you get HTO, the Hellenic Theater of Operations for 438, we have a pretty detailed 3D model of the airbase along with the real photography of the ground, etc. And so I was kind of very familiar with the roads and buildings, but didn't really know what they were. So driving around really gave me a great orientation of where the actual squadrons are located. So we have the 3 loops, and I heard rumors of where each squadron might be, but I actually know where they are now, the building. So, and seeing the monuments they had, if you want to call it that, you know, of the F4, F5, and an A7, I believe, if I recall correctly. But anyway, so we went up to this car park area where it was obvious to me that the squadron members parked their vehicles. And then this blue van shows up to the gate, and then Perseus kind of escorted me over to the commanding officer, who I will identify as his call sign as Stopper. And yeah, it was kind of a quick meet and greet, and he's like, come with me. And here I walk around to the passenger side of the van and saw the cool sword and wings for Perseus on the wings, and on the door of the vehicle, sorry. And I just thought that was really cool. And we did a little U-turn, and we drove down a straight line right to the squadron headquarters. And I've seen the squadron headquarters in videos before, so again, actually being there, seeing it myself was pretty damn surreal and cool. And we walk in the building, we make a left, and it's kind of like a big, long building with different offices and areas of the building, kind of like an old barracks, if you ever been in the military. So just a very long, triangular building. And we go down to the far side, and here I see these, I think if I recall, there was 4 or 5 pilots all kitted up in all their kit. It was obviously obvious to me that they're about to go for a flight, and I heard they had a 9 a.m. flight. And it was kind of funny. They're all these really good-looking Greek guys, bunch of Tom Cruise Greeks, you know, like almost a cliche, but it was pretty cool watching them. And then they kind of took off, where I'd assume they jumped in their van to go to their aircraft, their step time, you know. And he gave me a tour of that building, where we went to one area which I don't know what they call it, to be a briefing room where I come from. And this room was just incredible. Everything had the Perseus logo. They had models, helmets, all sorts of memorabilia. They had these really cool seats, and they each had a logo on the headrest, and I'm gonna try to find one of those to put in my sim room here. And it was just really, really cool to be standing in there, and such a very well finished room to really show the pride of their squadron. And then we kind of saw the rest of the building. You know, I saw their training department, I saw their briefing room, or not their briefing room, but their ops planning room, where I could see all the maps on the wall, and got to look at some of the charts for their lantern for setting up roll and pull and bunt maneuvers, and a lot of cool stuff that I was kind of familiar with in all my search of trying to fly realistic. Then we jumped out in the van, we went out to the flight line, and we were in the loop that I now know as the loop for the 347th. And there's just aircraft everywhere, you know, maintenance crew. And I've been trying, as I'm prepping to do this video, I've been trying to find a way to explain the feeling I had. You know, I worked on Canadian bases before. I've been on American ones. And this base was different. It really had that feel that I recall when I was in Afghanistan, and I was on the Kaya Air Base, the Kabul International, where they had some Dutch Vipers there. And it kind of had that feel, that real edgy feel of like, it's a wartime kind of feel. It's all serious, but in the point that, let's just say the way I'll explain it is, you know, a lot of the pilots had different patches on their uniforms, nothing like in Canada where everything is about uniformity, and you have some useless sergeant major running around making sure people's boots are black and their laces are tied, and, you know, patches are, you know, spaced out properly. A bunch of that nonsense that kind of really takes away the fun and everything. And when I was in Afghanistan, you know, being in wartime, you know, our pants were unbloused, uniforms weren't really uniform at that point, at least it was for my team, the way we operated, a little bit more freedom. And that's kind of the way it felt on this base. It kind of felt like, you know, I'm sure they respected and addressed the commander as a commander, but it was more like they were buddies. And I don't know, I can't find a way to explain it, but it was a really cool feeling being on that base and the environment. Like it was just all serious and ready for war rather than just monotonous kind of crap that you see on Canadian bases where we're worrying about DEI and everything else other than doing what our actual mission is. So I really respected that. But we went out, I think the first place we went to is a maintenance hangar where I met one fella who was their top engine guy who gave me a patch. Where is that patch? Gotta find that patch. It is here somewhere. Here it is. Pretty cool. Gave me this patch, took it right off his shoulder. But the funny thing is, he's also a flight simmer, more into World War II sims. And sorry, just had a little brain fart there. I'm not going to identify people as names for obvious reasons. But he ends up following me, and he knew who I was, which is kind of really weird, you know. And he was showing me some of the engine work he was doing, and like I said, it was really cool the way, you know, like at our police station we have visitors, you know, you say hi to them to be nice, but that's kind of about it. You get on with business. But everyone there treated me so well. It was just incredible the way they treated me. It made me feel so welcome to be there, and that I wasn't a burden on anybody. So I got to see parts of the engine as he had some of the fins. I'm not sure what you call it actually. The little, I'll call them the fins at the back. I probably should know what they're called, to be honest, but I don't. But he had some of those off, and he had some sort of camera scope that he was inspecting inside, and he was telling me about that. And it was pretty cool. That was actually the first time. It's going to sound really weird, but I got to touch one of their F-16s. Touching a real Greek Viper. I know it sounds pathetic, but I kind of just thought about it. I said, wait a minute, and I just put my hand on it, and they touch it, and I was like, that is so cool, you know. And after that, we went kind of driving out to the different shelters and hangars. One of them, I saw the nose cone off, and Stopper was explaining to me that there's only 2 areas on the base that are designated to have the radar running for obvious reasons. So got to see that. We went to an armament area where they're arming up. And then by about that time, the 9 o'clock flight was taxiing. So we got to, you know, of course he asked me if I wanted to see them take off, and you're damn right I did. So we ended up following them down the taxiway all the way to, I'd say they were taking off of 2-6 if I recall, and got to sit right up by the leak check area. So it's up nice and close. Unfortunately, I got lots of videos and photos, but I can't put those online. And got to see them. One of the pilots had waved to me, which I found out later was a guy that I follow on Instagram who I know of is a 347 pilot. So of course, wearing the helmet and whatnot, I couldn't tell who it was. And got them, saw them take off, and then Stopper was telling me that he's scheduled for the 12 o'clock flight, so I was kind of excited to see him get involved in that. And as we were kind of driving around looking at other places, I guess there was, his phone went off, and you know he was on the phone quite a bit, and there was a bird strike, so one of the aircraft were coming in for an emergency landing. So he was kind of tied up with that. And the whole point about that is, the whole time he's busy trying to be a boss and take care of an emergency situation, he still knew I was sitting beside him. He still kept me interested in the tour. He didn't kind of, you know, hand me off to someone else and say he was busy or completely ignore me. He still made me feel very welcome. And it was just, again, you're probably going to hear me say it a lot of times, just an amazing, surreal environment. So we went back to the squadron headquarters where he could take care of that, and then he kind of led me over to their ops planning room, where I was, you know, he just asked me to hang out in there for a bit, so he had to go make a phone call. One of the training officers kind of came in, and he was we were discussing where they do their low flying areas, and telling me a lot of the rules they have on where they fly low and their lowest altitude, etc. things that I obviously won't divulge, but things that I will use to enhance my flying, because ultimately all I want to do is fly just like they do and kind of follow the same procedures. So that was kind of a lengthy conversation I had with him, and I honestly, shamefully, I don't remember what his call sign was. I should, but I don't, sorry, I'm getting old. And then after that, I met with a young female pilot who's only 25 years old, real Greek goddess looking little thing. And she was fairly new. I think she told me she had a little over 100 hours. And she kind of took me out to their training wing, and I got to fly their simulator. Now that was pretty cool. I've seen their simulator in the 347th video that I have on this channel. You can see it there. And I knew what the simulator was like because they know about my simulator and kind of laughed about how I wouldn't like their simulator, but I still wanted to try it because I thought it'd be really cool. And we went over, and I've already seen it on camera, but it still blew my mind. They had these two massive big domes. One is a Block 30, the other one's a Block 50. And they're just huge. Like they need their own warehouse just to put those in. They have instructor console stations as well. And what I was really excited to see was the dome, the projection dome, because my old setup, I only had 270 degrees, so flying in a whole 360 degree projection was kind of cool. And the simulators were really, really nice. It's all the real instruments, very similar to what I have. Mine just has a little bit more detail, as theirs were a little bit more simplified, but still all quality instruments and everything. And I got to fly there for quite a bit. I met one of their training officers there, and she doesn't have a call sign yet, and I don't want to use her name, so she'll be a she, I guess, in this video. But she was kind of over my shoulder, and they were talking me through some of their attack profiles, and I actually flew horribly. It was embarrassing because the roll on the stick was super sensitive. So I was constantly turning like this, and I couldn't find control. And then it started to worry me because I thought maybe BMS isn't accurate, but later talking with them in the officers' mess, I found out that they said the real jet's not like that. So I think maybe it's just a sensitivity issue, because as they explained it, the manufacturer who built those simulators are no longer in service. I think they look like they're maybe from the late 90s, early 2000s. So they haven't been maintained. So they could probably use some maintenance to kind of get them. So I'd imagine that's why the sensitivity was off. But in the end, it was still fun flying around, flying the same simulators that they used. And then as we were heading back, she got a call, which I'm going to assume was from Stopper. She kind of had a task to do. So she kind of dropped me off at the car park area and said, do you know where you're going? And I said, yeah. And then so here I am just walking alone on the base, and it was just incredible. Like, I've got over 1,000 hours flying in the virtual world, being on a 3D model of this base, and just standing there looking around was just mind-blowing, like mind-blowing. And I actually forgot to say, one of the best parts was Stopper took me to one of the aircraft. I got to climb up in the cockpit, and that was exciting because, as you could see, my cockpit, really easy. I just step over and drop inside. I don't have the canopy. And I've seen how pilots do it, where you kind of have to slide your butt on and kind of contort yourself in there. Being a big guy, 6'2" at 240 pounds, I was always questioning myself if I had the flexibility to get in there, especially with the big boots I was wearing. I had my big hiking Solomon boots on. And yeah, I actually got in there no problem. And I know my cockpit is accurate. I knew it was, but it was a really nice reassurance when I sat in theirs and having almost, I'm about 1,000 hours sitting in this cockpit now, that everything was exactly the way it felt. Like everything looked the same as I knew it would, but it was nice to have that reassurance. One thing I was worried about was when I designed my cockpit, I moved my pedals forward a bit because I'm so tall and I wanted leg room. And I believe my pedals were moved just a few inches further. I asked Stopper if I could adjust the pedals. He said yes. So I adjusted them in the real cockpit and pushed them way out, and they're pretty much exactly where mine are. So that was a nice reinsurance as well. And then I started looking around, playing with a lot of switches and moving the throttle, trying to make sure that my cockpit feels the same. And my only regret was I was so excited that my brain completely turned off and I couldn't think, because in my mind I had a whole list of things, buttons and switches I wanted to move just to confirm that mine is right, and I didn't do half of that. So that's the only poor part, but it is what it is. I also didn't want to take up too much time because I'm pretty sure I could have sat in that cockpit for hours. But again, sitting in that cockpit, looking out at the landscape. Here I am actually sitting in Almyros for real, not in the simulator. Where it was parked was exactly like I see in BMS, the way the 3D model base. So it just really blows my excitement right out through the roof, you know. Yeah, I have no words, even though I'm trying to, but I have no words to describe how incredible an experience that was. And then as I was getting out, I asked him to take some photos. He took some fantastic photos that turned out really, really well with the way he framed them, and also just a perfect blue sky, just gorgeous photos. So they're going to be up all over my walls here once I get those done up, figure out which ones I want to use. And then we headed back over to Squadron headquarters, where he, of course, was pretty busy, and he did tell me that his flight got canceled, at least for himself. You know, he got to be a boss before a pilot, I guess. And I hung out in the officers' mess and chatted with a lot of the guys for a few hours, and just had a fantastic time. We're just discussing some of the procedures they do. We talked about politics in both Canada, and just really made me feel welcome. Like, it was just mind-blowing. And then before I left, I asked for a photo, and Stopper suggested we go do it in their briefing room. Like I said, I'm not sure what they actually call that room, but the one with all the cool chairs. And we all sat in there and had a bunch of photographs. And again, one of the other highlights was Stopper handed me a patch that he says not all his pilots have yet, and said that I'm one of them. So that really put a smile on my face, as geeky as that sound. But again, I cannot thank them enough. They completely made me feel like I was one of them, that they were honored to have me there, and it was just an absolute blessing. And I ended up purchasing everything I could with the Perseus logo. You probably saw photos of that on my Instagram page. Anyway, so I hope you enjoyed that video. I want to do a video just kind of explaining my experience there. And I wanted to express how lucky and grateful I feel. It was an amazing and surreal experience being on that airbase. I want to thank Perseus for kind of setting that up. And I also want to thank Stopper for giving me a private tour of his squadron and making me feel like I was just one of them. And to Stopper, may the sword of Perseus be with you on every flight.